Good evening, waifus and husbandos, and welcome back to another episode of WaifuCast SoloCast featuring your host, LunaKage. And today, I am continuing my topic of last week's, which is reading through this list of fighting game terms and elaborating on them if I feel they need to be. So let's get right into it because we still got a lot, and I really would prefer there not to be a part 3. So we last left off on link, where I described what a link was, and we're going right into the M words. First off is macro. This is important. It means a couple of different things, but it means the same thing pretty much. Okay, so macro means programmable command on a controller that allows for multiple inputs on one button pressed. This says almost always banned in tournaments. I've never seen it banned in tournaments. I'm not entirely sure why they would say that, because all a macro is like, for example, let's say you're going to throw your opponent in Street Fighter 4, right? Throw is light punch plus light kick. Now, that's easy to do in Street Fighter 4 on stick, but maybe, let's say you play Street Fighter 4 on controller, a regular pad, and you want to throw, but your light kick is X, and for whatever reason your light punch is triangle, right? So that would be really weird and annoying to press those two buttons at the same time with your thumb. So, maybe you'll map the right trigger to be left punch plus left kick. That way, when you press the right trigger, you'll get the throw command. I've never seen those banned in tournaments. Even in like fucking Street Fighter tournaments, I see people, like, even when they use stick, I've seen them have the fourth button on top be 3 punches and the fourth button on the bottom be 3 kicks. I've never seen that banned in a tournament, so I'm not sure what they're talking about there. I do know that turbo stuff is banned in tournaments, like some arcade sticks had turbo functionality. You could turn it on and off, where if you hold the button, it'll rapidly consider that as a bunch of different presses all at once. Now that's banned because it made stuff like links and Street Fighters especially easier to do, but that's different from a macro. Okay, next one, matchup. It says, when two characters fight against each other at the pinnacle of perfect play, who has the better chance of winning? For example, Sagat versus Zangief is a 7-3 matchup in Sagat's favor because Zangief has a hard time getting in through Sagat's fireball game. Okay, yeah. That's exactly it. When people say, oh, I hate this matchup, though honestly you'll see it used outside of the pinnacle of perfect play. What they discussed was matchup numbers, like 7-3. That means, what that essentially means is out of every 10 matches or 10 rounds, Sagat will win 7 and Zangief will win 3. If both players of each character are playing perfectly, right? But you'll still see people who, aren't exactly the pinnacle of a player saying, man, I really don't like this matchup, because a matchup is still between two characters at the end of the day. It doesn't matter, how perfectly you guys play it, especially if both players are still at a similar skill level. The matchup is still going to matter, to a certain extent. Like, for example, if me, a Noel player in BlazBlue, were to face somebody who was playing Arakune in BlazBlue, but they had no idea what they were doing, and I beat them 9 times out of 10, that doesn't mean that it's 9-1 in Noel's favor, because they're not really that good. Meanwhile, if I fight somebody who's just as good using Arakune as I am using Noel, then you'll find that it's much, much worse for Noel than it originally looked like. So really, it's not necessarily so much perfect play as it is similar level of play. But a matchup, basically, when discussed at lower levels or really in general, is how these two characters face each other. You know, and some people might have a positive matchup that they still don't like fighting because of how it makes them play, but that's kind of a different story. Next word, we got Meaty. An attack that hits an opponent as soon as they wake up, so they are forced to block it in its later active frames. So that is exactly what it is. Usually it can give you better frame advantage if the attack you're using has a lot of active frames. But even if not, then using meaty moves is a great way to prevent your opponent from using moves on wake up, unless they have invuln. But if they're just like mashing buttons on wake up, like if you've ever knocked someone down and then tried to continue pressure, but they were just hitting buttons and they hit you, that means you didn't meaty correctly. But you can stop them from doing that by meatying correctly. Also, like I was kind of talking about before, you can make it so that if your attack has a lot of active frames, you can make that attack be better on block by making it hit with its later active frames. So, for example, let's say a move is -1 on block, but it's got 8 active frames. That means it's -1 if it hits on the very first active frame. But if you manage to hit it on its last active frame, then it suddenly becomes +7. So that's why meatying is very important. There's 2 reasons. Those 2 reasons I just said, meatying is extremely important. Mix up. Making the other player guess what you are about to do. Mix up options include high attacks, low attacks, throws, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so mix up, that's exactly what it is. It's opening your opponent up. It's hitting them when they're blocking. You know, mix up can be anything. It could be mash/anti-mash, which means baiting your opponent into hitting a button in any situation where they can beat you, kind of. But more directly, if someone says this character doesn't have good mix-up or this character has a great mix-up, it's usually not referring to stuff like that because that's more along the lines of baiting. This one is more so like this character has a low and a high that are both really fast, so even if your opponent is blocking, you have a chance of opening them up with this. So usually if someone says a character has bad mix-up, right, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't have like a move that hits overhead or a move that hits low. It just means that the overhead is super slow and easily reactable, or it's unsafe on block if it's a certain game where that's like that, like BlazBlue, for example. If your overhead's super negative on block, then it's usually a lot more risky to use it, so usually that character's not going to be considered super good at mix-up. Meanwhile, there are other characters that can continue to safely apply pressure even after giving an overhead, which means they usually have better mix-up, not always. Like Ragna, his overhead's pretty slow, but usually if it's blocked, you could still follow up to kind of continue pressure if you play your cards right. But yeah, that's basically mix-up. It's a way to make your opponent get hit if they're blocking. It's essentially what it is. Okay, MM, also known as money match. A match played between 2 players for money, depending on the amount at stake. Maybe first to 3, first to 5, first to 10, etc. And yeah, that's what that is. It's a money match is a match for money. The terms in which the money match is being contested is usually agreed upon by the 2 people involved in the money match. So, like, it could be something as simple as first to 3, first to 5, first to 10, because those are the most accepted ones. But I do remember back in the Michigan BlazBlue community, like way back in the day, talking 2010, we used to have Starburst money matches where we bet Starburst instead of money. So, and that still counted, but it's just different terms. So stuff like that. Also, if someone is really confident in their abilities and really confident in their opponent's lack of ability, then they can make it a money match where if my opponent can beat me one match, he wins, but I gotta beat him 10 matches to win. You know, something like that. That could be a thing too. But most commonly, you're going to see like first person to win 3 matches, first person to win 5 matches, or first person to win 10 matches. Negative edge. The input that occurs when a button is released. So, yeah. So basically, pressing the button isn't going to cause this thing to happen, but releasing it will. Some examples, like they list here, Balrog, his turnaround punch uses negative edge. Arakune and BlazBlue, his bugs while in curse mode are negative edges. So, for example, there will be times when, say you press like the light punch button. You press it and it still does whatever light punch is, but if you hold it, then release it, it'll do something else. Basically, that's it. It really just depends on the character. There's not a whole lot of characters that use it, but there are still examples out there. So just be aware, if anybody says negative edge, that's what they're talking about. Negative edge is basically releasing the button instead of pressing it to get an action. Okay, OCV, one character victory. This is... Okay, so it can refer to one player winning a match for his team in team tournaments, or one character in team games such as Capcom vs. SNK2. So yeah, there are 2 types of OCVs. I don't know if they're going to get into the other OCV later. They might, because it's in the R's. But there's OCV, which is one character victory. So basically it would be like in a tournament where there's multiple people on a team in a 1v1 game. If the first person on one team completely wipes out the other team, that is an OCV. In a team game like Marvel vs. Capcom, if somebody wins the entire match of beating all 3 of his opponent's team members without ever switching his, you know, he just had his one character in, that's also an OCV. Then, on the other coin of that, there's the reverse OCV, which is the exact opposite. And it's usually a result of a failed OCV, really. Like, if in a team tournament, one player beats every one of his opponent, like the first player beats every one of his opponents, except for the last one, and then the last player on that other team, in turn, beats the entirety of the other team in a comeback, that's a reverse OCV. And the same is true in team games like Marvel vs. Capcom, where if this dude beats the other guy's whole team except for one, but then his other character, his anchor character, comes out and then wipes out the rest of the other team in a comeback victory, that is a reverse OCV. So we got Okizeme, or Oki. It's usually just referred to as Oki, because fuck all that other shit. What you do when your opponent is getting off the ground. It's usually lumped in with mix-up. So usually when you hear the word Oki, it's going to be like, oh, does this character have a good Oki game? It's usually because after they get a knockdown, they're really extremely scary. Either they've got great mix-up opportunities on Wake Up, or they've just got a really good advantageous position on Wake Up. But usually it's about the mix-up, honestly. There's not really a whole lot of examples I can give to where a character with quote-unquote good Oki doesn't have good Oki because they can open you up really fast. Like, I don't really know too many examples of that, but yeah, usually it's referred to as Wake Up, but whenever you hear Oki, or Mix Up, but whenever you hear Oki, it means what happens on Wake Up. Option select. Oh boy. Exploiting the game's input detection to give yourself the best option based on a certain input. For example, in Street Fighter 4, if you press down plus jab plus short, the game may use a crouching attack or a tech throw or do nothing. So, option select, basically when you hear that, just as kind of an abridged version of that, it's inputting 2 commands at the same time in such a way to where it will get the positive result depending on your opponent's action. And it's really weird to explain. Honestly, I'd recommend looking up an entire video on this, because like I can't really give you a solid explanation to where everyone's going to understand in a short little blurb. But that's basically the abridged version of what it is. If you're more interested, I would suggest looking it up. Option select. There's a bajillion videos on YouTube. So pick your game of choice. So like let's say BlazBlue, right? You want to know about, you play BlazBlue, you want to know about option selects. Go to YouTube, type in BlazBlue option selects, watch some videos, you know? Maybe ask someone else. Like they might be able to explain it to you better in depth. But as a general thing, I can't explain to you exactly what an option select is. It's a learned type thing. Overhead. An attack that must be blocked standing. Most jumping attacks are overheads. An example is SF4 Sagat's Toward Fierce elbow attack. Okay, so overheads. Overheads are usually just in 2D fighters because, for example, in Tekken, mid attacks cannot be blocked crouching, which is basically what a definition of an overhead is, but that doesn't make those overheads, because 3D fighters are a completely different beast. Overhead is normally in a game where the default blocking position is low, and then you block high to block overheads, because there's way more there's way more low attacks in the game, or attacks that can be blocked low than attacks that can be blocked high. Or maybe the low attacks are just quicker in general. There's a bunch of different reasons, but usually in 2D fighters, that's where you're going to hear overhead. You're not really going to hear overhead in the context of Tekken or Virtua Fighter or DOA or stuff like that, because they use a completely different system. But yeah, an overhead in 2D fighters is an attack that must be blocked standing. Next we got Parry. This can mean a bunch of different things, but in the Street Fighter V series, an attack could be parried by pressing forward on the joystick as it hit you. This allowed players to punish better and avoid taking chip damage. There are other games where you'll see the word parry used, but that's the common occurrence, or that's the common usage in a Street Fighter type game. But in a game like BlazBlue, for example, or really any anime game that has something like that, we will call something like, for example, Makoto in BlazBlue. She's got a quote-unquote parry. We all call it a parry, but it would probably be more correct to call it a counter. Well, I guess it's a counter now because it's got a follow-up, but it used to just be a parry. Basically, it's any kind of input that'll eat the input of the opponent and allow you to punish, usually with a completely separate attack. Whereas a counter is something that completely eats the input of your opponent while and then they follow up with automatically, usually, or have a follow-up that you need to use. So it's a little bit more like focused, I guess, or linear. Next is piano. Method of pressing buttons where you roll your fingers across the button like playing a piano key. Yes, I mean, it's basically just like that. It's just, I don't know if you can hear that, but that's how you do it. Obviously, it's harder to do on pad, but the reason why people would do this is in games like Street Fighter 4, more specifically than 5, hitting links is a lot harder, so you need to use that to kind of make it a little easier on yourself, or in games where, in order to achieve a certain special move, you need to rapidly input any kick button. But it doesn't really work in games like BlazBlue, where it's like you get this special by rapidly pressing C. Well, you can't really piano in order to get C because there's only one C button. But yeah, that's basically what piano's for. You're not really going to see too many people use piano nowadays because combos are a lot easier, but they were more prevalent for certain characters in Street Fighter 4. Plinking, also known as priority linking, inputting a second command one frame later to trick Street Fighter 4's input reader into thinking you pressed the first button twice. Yeah, again, I'd recommend watching a video on that if you're really interested, but it's not really something that's important anymore. Okay, now we're getting to more general stuff. Poking. Using relatively safe moves to poke at your opponent. Reuse crouch forward is a strong poke that you will see many players use. Yes. Usually when I am looking at a new character for the first time, I will see what move looks like it'd be great for poking, because that makes the neutral game a little bit better. At least at a low level for me. For example, like if I'm just picking up a character and I want to play this character, but I'm sick of just getting wailed on because I don't know how to play the neutral game. At the very least, I'll learn what their good pokes are, and then try and formulate a neutral game based on that. It's a pretty good way to get into learning a character for the first time. But also, learning your character's best pokes is the best thing you can do if you want to get good with that character, period. So it's important enough to where I make it one of the first things I learn. Priority determines whether an attack will beat, lose, or trade with another attack upon collision. Note, not natural value on a move, but rather a combination of speed, hitbox, etc. Okay. Certain games, and actually this is the best way to explain it, certain games have an actual priority kind of scale, kind of hierarchy. Like Street Fighter V is probably the best way to do this. Each move in that game has its own priority set. Like I think specials are the highest priority. So if any regular move hits the opponent at the same frame a special move hits you, then the special move is going to win. But generally in that game, specials beat heavies and everything below it. Heavies beat mids and lights. Mids beat lights. And lights just kind of don't beat anything. But since they're faster, that's why you still use them to try and beat stuff out. That usually makes it so that pressure is a little bit easier to kind of like keep up with in that kind of game. Because, for example, if you've got a move that's +2 on block, right? +2 frames on block, and you use your 5-frame medium move, your opponent has a 3-frame jab, but nothing else that's that fast, just that jab, then even if he hits jab at the exact frame that he can, your medium move will still beat him out because it won't trade. It's going to beat that light move. And that's kind of a good way to explain that a little bit. But priority really depends in what game you're playing. Proration. Extending a combo causes the remaining hits of the combo to do less damage. In Street Fighter IV, the remaining damage of a combo is reduced by 10% for every hit over 2. Multi-hit attacks such as Ryu X Tatsu counts as only hitting once. Yeah. Proration is just the word we use to describe one of two things, but they both mean essentially the same thing. So, proration, as it's happening, like for example, if a combo drops, but it's a combo that you've seen your opponent use a lot, you're like, why'd that drop? And he says, oh, I prorated it too much. That usually means that even though it looked like the same combo, they might have used 1 or 2 extra moves like early on that made that combo impossible. Also, you could hear it used when someone says, oh, this move has bad proration or this move has good proration. That usually, when used in that context, it means, okay, if I hit this move like as a combo starter, then I can get a bigger combo if it's got good proration, or I will get a smaller combo than normal if it's got bad proration. Push block. A tool in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 done by pressing back plus 2 punches as an opponent's attack lands. Pushes them away from you and negates chip damage, similar to Guilty Gear's Faultless Defense. Yeah, push block, advancing guard, Marvel vs. Capcom 3. A lot of games have a push block, but not every game does. I do believe certain games, like Marvel especially, advancing guard is a lot stronger of a push block than like Guilty Gear's Faultless Defense or BlazBlue's Barrier, because those are more of a gradual, just get my opponent off of me faster, but not instantly. Meanwhile, advancing guard, and I believe push block in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I believe so, just immediately push your opponent off of you, and that's why there's certain things that they can do to bait that out, because it's such a strong tool, but it also leaves you open for certain other things. Okay, quick recover. Recovering off the ground faster than normal, done with a different input in different games. Okay. Quick recover, I've never heard it called quick recover, but I see why they call it that. Normally, we refer to it as quick tech, quick teching, uh, instant tech, emergency tech. In BlazBlue, we call it that. But yeah, it's basically getting off the ground faster than normal, or in the case of some games, like as fast as you can. Because some combos will have a hard knockdown, some combos will just lead to a regular, not hard knockdown where you can just attack immediately. That's what we call it. That's what we call that. Ranbat, ranking battle, a series of tournaments where the top players get points, or top placers get points towards their overall standing. After several tournaments, the points winner wins the pot accumulated over the course of the series, often played over several weeks. Yeah, Ranbat, series of tournaments where points are gained. That's pretty much the easiest way I can do it, or easiest way you can describe it. RC, oh shit, roll cancel. Okay, so here's the thing. RC really just depends on where you're going, because roll cancel I've never actually heard of, and apparently it's a CVS2 technique. But when you see RC in BlazBlue, it means rapid cancel. If you see RC in Guilty Gear, it means Roman cancel. So let's see what they say about roll cancel. It's a technique in CVS2 where a special move is input during the first three frames of roll. The special inherits any special characteristics of the roll, such as being invincible for a short period. Oh wow, that's cool. But yeah, it's only in CVS2 because I've never seen that in any other game. But I've already described what a rapid cancel, Roman cancel was. So if you see RC in the context of ArcSys games, normally they're talking about not what I just said, not roll cancel. Read, understanding the opponent's patterns to guess what he or she is going to do before they do it. Yeah. I can't describe it any better. If you've got a good read, like if you ever hear someone say, oh man, that was a good read, or oh man, I read him like a book, it means you guess what your opponent was going to do based on what he's done before. Reset, an attack that knocks the opponent out of the air back onto his feet, resetting his position. What? Okay, I guess I can see why they call it that in the context of Street Fighter, because normally there's not like air combos in Street Fighter, because a lot of times attack will lead to a knockdown, which means they have too much control over when they wake up in most cases. Like they can use a quick recovery or a slow get up or a back get up. Meanwhile, a reset in the context of this explanation is when you hit them in the air, causing them to air recover, but they can't do anything until they hit the ground, meaning that you have them right where you want them. But I've almost never heard it used in that context, especially coming from anime games. And even in Street Fighter V, I've never heard a reset described like that. A reset, in my experience, is a combo ended usually early in such a way to gain like almost an instant mix-up, causing another combo. So again, like it kind of applies here in the context of what I described, because again, in the previous Street Fighter games where you cause your opponent to tech in the air a certain way so that they don't get knocked down, that is a similar approach in other games too. Like for example, if in BlazBlue, if you don't do your combo ender that ends in a knockdown, but instead you do something that causes them to recover quicker, and they're not prepared for it, and you hit them with another mix-up when they're already so busy trying to process the fact that they didn't tech the way they used to, so they get hit with that mix-up because they weren't even like ready to wake up, let alone ready to block something. You know what I mean? So a reset is like resetting your opponent into another combo, basically. Reversal, using an attack in the first frames coming out of a state in which you cannot attack, waking up, coming out of block stun, etc. For example, Akuma can use his Raging Demon Super to punish E Honda's block sumo headbutt when he has reversal timing. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. Because a reversal, especially if your opponent's meeting correctly on wake up, for example, the only time you're going to hit him with a reversal is if you get it, perfect timing, like the quote-unquote reversal timing that they're using here. But yeah, like if you hear somebody talking about a move that's a good reversal, it's usually like a dragon punch or a counter of some kind. But they're talking more about the situation of reversal. So like a DP moment, as I like to call it. But that's just me. That's not an actual term. But yeah, that's kind of what that is. Reverse OCV, I talked about this earlier. Roll. Okay, here, a technique in SNK games, the CVS2, where a character rolls forward and gains some limited invincibility. Okay. Now this was also in Persona 4 Arena, and that's exactly what it is. It's usually a good way to get through projectiles. Usually it's beaten by throws. A good one thing that makes rolls kind of powerful if used correctly is that if you're in the corner and you read somebody's next attack, you can roll through them, thereby putting them in the corner. But usually, like I said, rolls are beaten by throws, so you're usually in a position, if you're in the corner, where you can get thrown pretty easily. So that's where kind of, you're not just going to be hitting roll whenever you're in the corner because of that, essentially. Roman cancel, I described that earlier. RTSD, rush that shit down. What does rush down mean? I'm glad you asked, because that's the next one. Rush down. A style of play that revolves around attacking quickly to make the opponent guess what you're going to do. Often goes hand in hand with mix-ups. Certain characters play better with a rush down style. Yes. Rush down is also the kind of character I prefer to play. I've made a whole career based on rush down. Yeah. Attack quick, attack often, but usually if your character's good with rush down, they're not normally that good on defense. Sometimes they are, and those characters are really fucking good, usually. Okay, SA 1, 2, 3, Super Arts 1, 2, and 3. This is a Street Fighter 3 thing. All that means is which super your opponent is using, or you're using. Because you didn't go in with all of them like you do in a lot of games. So if your opponent selects Super Art 1, you could select Super Art 3, stuff like that. Alright, safe jump. A jumping attack on a knocked down opponent, timed to be safe regardless of the opponent's response. And this is really important, because like if your character has a safe jump, it means that they're fucking good, usually. Well, I mean, that's a good option is what I mean. Because if you're fighting an opponent that has dragon punches, reversals, and you're always safe jumping them, then you'll be able to block if they DP'd, or if they decided to block, they'll be in block stun from the attack that you used from your jump. So basically how it works is that you jump and you use an attack, and if this is an actual safe jump situation, because not every character has a safe jump, but if this is a real safe jump, then you can input the attack, and after you input the attack, you hold back to block. So what this does is that if your opponent didn't use a reversal, they'll either get hit by your jumping attack if they mashed a button, or they will be forced to block it if they blocked it. Meanwhile, if they used a DP, thing about DPs, reversals, is that they still have startup. So if they did that, it'll come out, your jumping attack will whiff right through the startup animation, but you'll recover in time to block before the reversal goes active, allowing you to block it and punish it without actually losing your momentum if they decided not to DP. So safe jumps are really strong, so it was very important that you understand that. Saving attack, SADC, Japanese name for focus attack. Alright, I didn't know that. But that's what that is. Semi-infinite, a combo that appears to be an infinite but breaks after a certain number of repetitions. See also infinite. Alright, so that's interesting because I don't call them semi-infinites, and I think most of the anime community don't either. We call them loops. And it's basically just a combo that repeats itself but has an ending. Like, it can't just go on forever, even though it looks like you should be able to. And usually that's because proration, or what's also called hit decay in some situations, will cause additional repetitions at a certain point to no longer be possible. Your opponent will be able to recover before your next attack can connect. So usually if you find something like that, if you find a good loop, you'll find the maximum number of loops you can do, and then an ender. So find out how many loops you can do, and then find a way to end it. And if that ender doesn't work after your maximum amount of loops, then take away one more loop, and usually your ender will be able to connect after that. Okay, SGS, Shun Goku Satsu, or Instant Hell Murder. Another name for Akuma's Raging Demon super attacks. Okay. Usually you're going to see it called Raging Demon or just Demon. Shoto, characters trained in Shotokan fighting style, Ryu, Ken, and Akuma. Thing is, that is the direct Street Fighter definition, but Shoto is used in other games too. It's to describe people that have a similar special move set to Ryu, Ken, and Akuma. So any character with quarter circle forward fireball, quarter circle back melee attack of some kind, maybe it's a hurricane kick, maybe it's a kick of some kind, but sometimes it's not a hurricane kick, sometimes it's like, a rush punch, but usually it's a melee attack of some kind, and then they have a DP. Usually the most important thing is just DP and fireball with a Shoto. If your character has these two things, they're usually considered a Shoto. Even if they play completely different otherwise, they're also usually the easiest characters to learn. Not always true, but usually the case. For example, Hyde from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is considered a Shoto. Akatsuki from Yu-Gi-Oh! Also considered a Shoto. Jin from BlazBlue considered a Shoto. But yeah, these characters I just named, especially in the case of Hyde and Jin, extremely different from Ryu, Ken, and Akuma, but since they got a fireball and a DP, they're considered Shotos by most people. SPD, Spinning Pile Driver, it's Zangief's 360. Normally, when someone refers to a command grab, they say, this particular kind of command grab, they say 360 or 720. 360 is the normal special of a command grab, or this particular kind of command grab, a grappler command grab as I call it, and then a 720 is usually the super version that does like half of your fucking health. Special / super cancel. Okay, canceling the recovery frames of an attack into a special or super attack. Yes. So I don't know if I said this earlier. I think I might have touched on it in one of the waifu casts, but basically it means canceling a normal into a special or canceling a normal into a super. It's basically what it is. It usually allows you to combo into those moves a lot easier, or rather safely, because, for example, if that special move that you're using is punishable on block, you want to make sure that you use it without it getting blocked, right? So what's the best way to do that? Combo into it. So if it can be comboed into, then you'll do it. Or you'll want to do it. And the easiest way to do that in a lot of cases is with special canceling or super canceling. SRK, Shoryuken. It's basically another way to say DP. So I believe they mentioned DP earlier. So yeah, if you ever see SRK, it means Shoryuken or DP. So those two words are interchangeable. Stun, a sometimes hidden meter that, when filled, causes a character to be dizzied. Okay, yeah. So this is talking about the actual the value of stun. So when this value gets maxed up, you get dizzied or stunned. Not every game has this. Some games just have moves where you're put into a stun state if you're hit with them, or you block them. But this definition, or in this context, when you see the word stun or stun meter, this is what they're talking about. Tap, Balrog's Boxer's turnaround punch. You're only going to see this obviously in the context of Balrog, because I honestly don't think any other game has an attack that's similar to this. I mean, maybe, but I've never seen it used other than this. But yeah, it's Balrog's turnaround punch. You execute it by holding all 3 punches or kicks and releasing them. It goes through projectiles at certain ranges. It does more damage based on how long it was held. That's what it is. Target combo. Okay. Normals that cancel into another. Okay, this is a little different because I believe they didn't mention this earlier. Because again, this list is very, very focused towards Street Fighter, Marvel, Capcom, SNK games. But a target combo in Street Fighter and a Gatling in anime fighters, or a normal chain, or what else to call it, magic series, all of these words or terms mean normals that cancel into another normal. In Street Fighter, usually these normals are different than one another, usually. So for example, let's say someone's target combo, they have medium punch, heavy punch, and that's their target combo. The heavy punch in that target combo is usually different than just hitting heavy punch. Meanwhile, in most anime games, a Gatling, if you hit, medium punch, heavy punch, it'll literally just be that character's medium punch chained into that character's heavy punch. Now, some characters do have something that's more similar to a target combo in anime games, and I believe we still call them target combos in anime games. I can't really remember if we do or not. It's just not a term I really remember seeing a whole lot in the context of anime games, but the easiest example I can think of is Tsubaki from BlazBlue. You could press 5B with her, but if you press 5BB, so 5B, 5B, it's 2 different attacks. So 5B has its own follow-up, basically. But you could also cancel the first hit of 5B into another move similar to regular Gatlings. So yeah, it's target combo. You can use that basically to mean the same thing, but when you're talking about just chaining a normal into another normal, that's usually referred to as a Gatling. Tatsu, Tatsumaki Senpu Kyaku, the Shotokan Hurricane Kick. So yeah, when you see Tatsu, they're talking about fucking reuse Hurricane Kick, or anything that looks similar. For example, Akatsuki and Unio. We call his quarter circle back A, B, or C his Tatsu, because it is a quarter circle back, it is a spinning kick, even though it does not look like Hurricane Kicks that Ryu would have. It is still indeed a Tatsu. That's what we call it. Tick throw, a throw that is timed to land at the earliest frame an opponent can be thrown after blocking. Yeah. So usually it's a move that you'll use on your opponent's block. Usually that has pretty decent recovery but low hit stun or block stun, and then immediately doing a throw. Throw tech. Okay, throws cannot be blocked, so a throw tech is how you stop the opponent's grab. In most games, it's done by inputting the throw command when a certain number of frames of the opponent throwing you. Yeah, so it's breaking a throw. Throw tech, throw break, we call it those. TOD combo, also known as the Touch of Death, refers to a combo that kills the opponent from any amount of health. Yeah. TOD combo, sometimes we call them death combos. Sometimes we'll still call them infinites, even though they're not a loop, just because, if it kills your opponent, then it's probably something like that. But yeah, a death combo. 100% combo, that's something we call it that too. Trade. Both players get hit with each other's attacks upon collision. Occurs when both characters attack and their hitboxes coincide. Yeah. So a trade is when two players hit a button, hit an attack, and they collide at the same time, and both players get hit. I don't think they mentioned clash in this. Maybe it's because clash is an anime thing. But a clash is the polar opposite of that. It's when both players throw an attack at the same time and they hit at the same time, but instead of both players get hit, neither of them get hit, and usually you can cancel into something else from the clash. Look up Guilty Gear Clash battles on YouTube, and I think you'll enjoy what you see. Turtle, a style of play that centers on waiting for your opponent to make the first move and reacting to what he does. Often called cheap by newer players. Certain characters are complemented well by this playstyle, such as Guile. Yes. Turtling, somebody who's being very defensive, somebody who's watching his opponent rather than going in. And it's a really smart playstyle, too. I definitely would not consider it cheap. Open your opponent up. All right. Universal overhead, UOH. I've never seen this term before, or at least I've never seen UOH before. But a universal overhead is indeed in games, like in a lot more games. They list Street Fighter 3 because that is true. It wasn't Street Fighter 3, but it was also in Persona 4. Persona 4 had universal overheads in the form of all-out attacks. So you wouldn't see UOH, you would see AOA, because all-out attacks were the universal overhead. I can't think of any other games, but I do know that that's certainly not the only game, or those two are certainly not the only games with universal overheads. Unblockables comes in two forms. One, a move that must be avoided rather than blocked, such as Akuma's Raging Demon. Or two, a series of attacks that hit in a way that make it so you cannot block them. Hits high and low at the same time, hits behind and front, etc. Yeah. Usually a character with an unblockable of the second kind is really fucking good, unless that unblockable leads to, some piddly damage for too much resources. Like, I guess, Carl from BlazBlue, his new unblockables are not that good from what I hear. Unblockables, moves that must be avoided rather than blocked, the first variety. Akuma's Raging Demon, obviously command grabs are unblockables, because command grabs usually cannot be broken like normal grabs can, so you must avoid those. So most 720s are like that, you have to jump over them. Some moves, like Noel's command grab, quote unquote, it can only hit standing opponents, so you can jump, you can duck. But yeah, that's technically an unblockable of the first variety too. Usually though, when we refer to unblockable, we're talking about the second variety, because usually if we're talking about the first variety, we mention what it actually is, like what kind of unblockable it is. Like, oh yeah, you can't break that, that's command grab. They're not going to say, oh, you can't break that grab because it's an unblockable, Untechable knockdown, knocking the opponent down so that they cannot quickly recover. Okay, so untechable knockdown is what they call it. You can also call it hard knockdown. So when you hear someone say hard knockdown, it means a knockdown that your opponent can't tech quick. So they can't quick recover, they can't quick tech. They have to wake up at the time that fucking, the game dictates. It obviously depends on game to game, but that's what that is. Vortex, a style of play in which, after knocking the opponent down, you make them guess what you are going to do and how they should block react, and they are more likely to guess wrong than right. So yeah, this is a mix-up brought to its extreme, right? If you see somebody called a mix-up character, that's great. You shouldn't be that afraid. Usually, they're pretty fair. If you see someone called a vortex character, that usually means getting knocked down is going to make you very angry. Because that character usually just has an extremely good Oki game. What in the anime community we call that set play instead of a vortex, but you'll still see it referred to as vortex from time to time. But if you see someone call it set play or say set play, they're talking about a vortex. All right, wake up. What you do when you are getting off the ground. Obvious enough. Zoning, finding the perfect distance to limit your opponent's options. So, yeah, it's usually better if your zoning character has a fireball of some kind or a projectile of some kind. But basically, a zoning character is a character that's really good at keeping their opponent at one place away from them. So, like, I can't just say just one place in general, because if that one place that your character is keeping you is right in their face, then that's usually a rushdown character. But usually if your character is super good at keeping an opponent in the mid-range or keeping them far away, then that is a zoning character. Usually they are a lot more a lot harder to play correctly, especially for newer players. But again, for newer players, they're extremely hard to get around as well. Especially if you're a rushdown character, playing against zoning characters is definitely a big game of momentum. Where if the rushdown character gets in, there's usually not a whole lot the zoning character can do, because a lot of zoning characters are very bad up close, while a lot of rushdown characters are very bad far away. So yeah, zoning is essentially the rushdown of far away. Is the best way I can say it. Yeah, actually, with that, we're done with the list. Oh, I am glad. I thought for sure I might have needed to do another version on this, but I'm going to have the editor put the links in these two videos. I don't think he's put the link in the first one yet, but if you want to read these explanations I went through, again, it's the shoryuken.com/glossary. But we're going to have the links in the descriptions like as soon as possible. So if you want to read up on them or have a quick reference just in case you forget, so you don't have to necessarily rewatch these two videos, this 2 hours worth of content just to, slowly figure out shit. But yeah, I hope you got a little bit more of an understanding of the terms that I throw out without even thinking a lot of times in Scrubcast especially. Sorry, I can't talk today apparently. Yeah, but that's it. And this has been a journey. 2 hours. Holy crap. All right. With that said, I'm going to go away for a while. But while I'm gone, don't forget your waifu.